Today on episode 33 of the Play Guitar Podcast, it's all about building guitar solos. With just a little planning, you can create melodic, memorable solos every time. I've also got listener feedback, so stay tuned. Welcome to episode 33 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that'll help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today. Today on the show, I thought I'd talk about guitar solos a little bit. Improvising on the guitar, that's one of my favorite things to do. I love being able to create a riff or a lick or a melody or whatever you want to call it at a moment's notice. Sometimes I even come up with something unexpected, something surprising that doesn't sound like my usual playing. And that totally energizes me. Improvising is a huge part of modern guitar playing, whether it's jamming with your band or friends or just putting on a backing track. Improvising is always fun, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's a great way to come up with ideas. You can get all sorts of ideas from improvising. You can get ideas for songs, for leads, for riffs, bass lines, and melodies. But today, I want to talk about the next step. Improvising is great, and it's an essential part of your playing, but the ideas you get from improv are not always the finished product. Sometimes we have to refine these ideas a little bit more. To get something truly listenable and memorable for recording a lead or writing a song, there are some things that need to be addressed. These things, these ideas that we're creating on the guitar, they're important to us. Being guitar players, usually these riffs, lines, or licks, they're our complete focus. This is why we go through the hours and hours of practicing. Being able to create these ideas, that's the goal for beginners, but it's the focus for intermediate players, and then it's the craft of advanced players. But being so invested, so focused on these things, it's easy to ignore the big picture. And that's that these cool ideas they're part of a bigger picture. And that picture is the song. That's the vehicle that takes all of these great ideas and arranges them in a way that presents them to everyone else, to other people. And it's going to take those people on a 3 to 5 minute trip through time. That's right, other people. It's easy to forget about playing for listeners when you spend so much time practicing alone at home. While knowing what you like to play, that's super important, and that's the key to developing your voice on the guitar. It's only part of the picture. If playing the guitar is your happy place and you never care about playing for other people, then there's nothing wrong with that. Enjoy. Go ahead. But just know that you're not getting all of the joys of playing music that way. Playing music for other people is so rewarding. When it goes well, there's nothing better. You get immediate feedback, which is essential to help you move forward as a player. Good feedback or bad feedback, either way, it moves you forward. And it gives you a reason to get things done. And when you have that reason, that pressure, your growth speeds up. You get faster at a faster rate, and your goals are achieved at a much faster rate as well. And once you get into this area, you have a new focus. Your focus becomes the song. Yeah, you're still playing your favorite leads and riffs and all that stuff, but now they're part of a unit, a mixture of rhythm and melody and chord progressions. They all have to work together to take the listener through time on that small journey. These great ideas that you get from jamming, they need to be refined to suit the song. to make the song better. The guitar solo or fills that you're playing, they're now part of a bigger picture. They take on a role. Usually they're a break from the main melody of the song, or they're a different part of the song to keep the song interesting. When your goal is to play something interesting to keep the song going and make it interesting, you start thinking differently than when you're just jamming. You try to play something that's not only cool and fun to play, but an important part of the structure of the song. We've all heard players that don't get this. Players that they get their moment to shine. It's guitar solo time. And they play everything they know. It's pack it all in there as much as possible. And they're just taking advantage of the moment and going a little crazy. I've seen it a lot. You might think, well, what they're doing, that's impressive. That's great. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I really couldn't listen to that for very long. That's called taking over the song. And taking over the song never ends well. My favorite solos, they always support the song. They make the song better. Even great blues players, where in blues, the structure of blues songs, they kind of promote improv and jamming. Even those guys have an idea of where they're going with their lines. They have certain licks that they use every time, signature licks that are part of the song and move the song forward, and then they throw some improv in between those. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about building guitar solos, how to make your guitar lines memorable, interesting, and just right for the song that you're playing. This is a lot of fun for me, and I'm looking forward to getting into that. But before we get started today, I want to remind you about something that fits right into with today's main topic. It's my free video lesson called Get Your Blues Soloing Under Control. It's the 6 steps I found that will give you the right foundations for playing killer blues solos in no time at all. It's a lesson I put together after meeting with some of you guys, and I know it can really help take your soloing in a new direction. Easy way to find it, just go to freeblueslesson.com. That's it. And when you do, you'll sign up for this. You'll get news about all of my podcasts, videos, and other cool stuff sent directly to your inbox. So go ahead and check out freeblueslesson.com. So thanks again for joining me today. Let's go ahead and get started with the main topic, how to build guitar solos. How to build guitar solos. Are all of the guitar solos that you hear improvised? Made up on the spot? I would say that very few are. They might start that way, but by the time it's record time, they're far from improvised. Even if you're going for that kind of a feel, that live feel, the solo still needs to be listenable. It's not often that the first time you work on a guitar solo for a song, everything just sits perfect. You may have the central ideas for what you want to say, but on listening back, they may not fit the song or connect together well. Then you sit back and think, what do I need to do to make this the best that it can be and make the song that much better? Well, today I want to go through the steps with you to make a really standout guitar solo. Having these steps in place can keep you from a lot of frustration, but most of us know what a good solo sounds like. But creating our own, making our own, that can be tricky. Whether it's a super melodic solo like David Gilmour plays or like Brian May plays, or if it's something super fast and in your face, no matter what they are, all solos have some similarities. They're all limited to a certain amount of time to make a musical statement. And when you're limited to that time, there are ways to make the best of it. I'm going to go through step by step how to make the most of the time that you have. A few years ago, I got the idea for this podcast, and I was super excited about it. And I just dove in without really thinking things through. I didn't really have the time then in my life to focus on something as time intensive as this is. But I did. I knew that I was excited and I loved the idea of helping other guitar players on a podcast. I thought it'd be great. And I did record 2 episodes that are not up there anymore. But shortly after that, I realized that if I was going to do this show justice, I needed to be able to give it time. And like I said, which is at that time in my life, that wasn't possible. But what did come out of that time where I recorded those 2 episodes, something that I'm using every week now, was the intro to the show and the form of the show. So I just got started with the limited time I had, and my first business at hand was to create an intro song, the theme song to this show. I played in the beginning and at the end. I had a good idea what I wanted it to sound like. I wanted it to be an upbeat and exciting song. I wanted to make sure it had a good balance between rhythm guitar and lead guitar. I wanted both of those to be heard. I wanted something that could be listened to each week without getting tiresome. I wanted to be able to give show information over parts of it. I wanted to be able to talk over it. And I wanted it to start slow and then kick in and then build up till the end of it. I also wanted it to have a Hendrixy kind of rhythm, and I loved Foo Fighters type drums. I wanted those kind of drums. And to top it all off, if that was I wanted to have a cool Satriani style melody over it. So that's what I wanted. Easy, right? No, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. That's a lot of information to fit into less than 1 minute. So I got to work. I started with the drums, and then I built the rhythm guitar main section over that. And then I found a second drum pattern, a complementary pattern for the ending, and I made some kind of scratch rhythm parts for that, some throwaway parts. And I then thought about the intro, the beginning of this, where I wanted a bunch of like feedback that intensified into the main section. And that was going to be tough to get done right. But I'll go over how I eventually did that. I might do that in a video because it was really cool how I got that done. So I had all the sections at this point. I had everything kind of mapped out what I wanted, and I had the scratch rhythm parts, just some scratch parts right there. So I then went to town, and I was putting down bass, and then I started doing the final rhythm parts exactly the way I wanted to sound. And to get just the right tones, I did a lot of experimenting. And I ended up using a combination of real mic amps and some direct modeling stuff combined to get it just the way I wanted. So I had all of that, and then it was time to do the solo. And I just started like everybody else. I just tried jamming over the whole thing and listened back to it. It was way too busy, too much guitar over it. So I tried several other takes, and it just didn't fit right. This was to be the intro for a show, and the lead had to take that into consideration. So I got frustrated and I had to reevaluate what I was going to do. This was important to me, and I wasn't getting the results I wanted. So I had to take a step back, and I had to build something that was appropriate for what I was trying to do. In my progress, it slowed down a lot, considerably. And I'm glad it did, because I'm very happy with the end result. So today I'd like to share with you my process for creating a solo that's right for whatever song that you're working on. And then after that, I'll go through how I use this with examples from the intro song. So hold on for that. The first step in building a solo is understanding what you're dealing with. What are you in for? Over the course of your solo, We need some big picture stuff, the things that will point you in the right direction right away, especially if you're not sure what to do over it. So the first thing is, what style is the song that you're playing? That's going to dictate your direction right off the bat. Although you don't have to stick to what's common for a certain style, you will know what the listener's going to be expecting from that style of a song. Knowing that, you can then decide whether you want to make something that fits, that sounds good with that style, or you want to deviate from the norm and get a bit creative and do something a little different. Gives you that decision. This is also the right time to start thinking about what type of guitar tone you want to use for the song, what's appropriate to the song, and what will cut through the mix, what will cut through well, depending on what other instruments are playing in the song. The next thing we need to know to understand what we're dealing with is, what's the chord progression that you're going to be playing over. You could say this is the most important part. This is where we get to choose our scales and our arpeggios. We can look and see if all the chords fit into a certain key, a certain set of tones. And then we'll know what our scale is, what's our bass scale for over those chords. And we'll also see to make sure the chords and the scale fit perfectly in a key. And if they don't, what are the changes that you have to make to your bass scale to make sure they fit certain chords in that progression? Do you move on to a whole new scale for that? Or do you just change a note or two to outline those kind of finicky chords that you find? Also, does it change keys mid-solo? If you're playing jazz tunes or something that has a lot of key changes, you really have to know your direction through that. Or it might be like an effect. I know a lot of pop songs, they'll jump up a key for the big ending to really take that song home. Also, knowing your chord progressions and the scales that you're going to play over that will dictate the inside sounds from the tension sounds. You can decide, are you going to use totally inside sounds, very melodic, barely outside sounds? That's, kind of like blues with the minor pentatonic scale. Are you going to add some tension sounds leading into the new chords, like a jazz song or a fusion song? Or does it go through multiple keys like we talked about? The next thing to understand with what you're dealing with is, are there any other melodies of the song? This is very important. Taking the other melodies of the song, taking them into consideration. If there are, quickly analyze those main melodies. The vocal melody, or, it could be instrumental, but do they have a certain phrasing or a certain rhythm pattern? And this is great to base your phrasing of your lead on. Also, are there any articulations that make that melody stand out? That could be swooping up into notes or a certain vibrato that makes it stand out. You should also take a listen for dynamics. Is it a whisper sound? Is it screaming? Or does it build over time and then level off? Just quickly write down anything that stands out from that main melody. So these are the big picture ideas. From these, you can quickly find a direction for your solo. What style are you going to use? What scales or arps are you going to use over the chord changes? How much tension do you want to use in your lines? And are there interesting parts of the melody that you can use in your own solo? The phrasing, the rhythm, the articulations, and the dynamics. Just writing down this information can really make clear what it is you want to accomplish with your lead. And that right there, that may be all you need to get moving forward. But it's not all. Let's refine what we're going to do a little bit more. The next step we want to do is we want to decide what we want to say. When I teach improv, I always say the same thing over and over again. Find the tonic notes of the scale that you're going to play, then play anything you want with that scale. But when you're done saying what you're going to say, hit the tonic note, kind of as the punctuation. When I say that part about saying what you're going to say, it usually brings a little smile to people who are new to improvising. That's right. Even though we aren't using words, we are saying something. We're putting across a feeling by the choices in the way we play and the notes we have. It's pretty powerful. By the choices we can make listeners feel something. So deciding what you want to say with the guitar is something that most of us don't think about, but it makes a lot of sense when you do take the time to think about it. So let's find out what we need to know to be able to say something with our lead. If I was stumped trying to figure out what I wanted to say with my lead first, I would write down a few descriptive words. I might say, I want to play something beautiful, or pretty, or I want to have it come across as angry or intense or thoughtful or enticing, something that draws the listener in. Or I might want to say something that takes them on a ride, takes them higher, takes them from one place and builds them up. Or you could do the opposite. You could try to bring something that calms someone down. It could be a really intense song, and it might be time for a break. So your lead could calm someone down. So think about how to best convey what you want to say, how to put that across. Maybe you might want to play fast to sound intense, or you might want to play rhythmic to be thoughtful, or fluid to be pretty or beautiful. Think about the best way to get this across to the listener and write those things down. Also, think about you being an extension of the melody of the song. Think about building upon what's already there, taking it to the next step. So if the melody has a certain phrasing, you could maybe start with that and then embellish on it too. So these are the things that you need to think about when you're deciding what you want to say. And that brings us to the next part, which is outlining your solo. In outlining your solo, there's two big points to this. You have to know what is before you're playing and what's after you're playing. You're basically, with your solo, connecting these two sections, and you have to decide how you want to do this. You could just do it simply. You can say, I just want to continue the vibe of what was the chords that were going on before and build up to the next section. Or you could drop the dynamics down to break the intensity of the song like we talked about before. Or you could shock the listener with something completely different. And this is great for very repetitive songs. So it adds a little bit more interest in case you're in danger of getting bored by some repetitive things over and over again. So next, you want to know how much time you have to play your solo. This is important. This dictates how you're going to take the listener from one place in time to another. And how we do this is super simple. We're just going to write down a little timeline, just so we know where to put each of our musical statements and how long they're going to be. So that's our outline for the solo. We move on to the next step, which is choose your ideas. We're going to choose these ideas from our improv. We're going to use our big picture items that we talked about. We figured out the scale we want, the chords we're playing over, maybe the rhythm we're going to play, and the tone. So what you do now's the fun part. Now you spend some time playing over the section, getting some ideas. Make sure you record yourself so that you can listen back to those ideas and find a few interesting licks or phrases that seem to work well. Those are what we're going to use. And then we link them together. And that's the tricky part. Once you have your main ideas down and they're in the style that you need and they have the rhythm and the phrasing that you want, making them flow nicely is key. And you put them in the order, each idea in the order that you think sounds best for the song, but they might not stand well on their own. They may need to be linked together with maybe a simple walk up the scale into your new lick that can sound great. Or some repetition, maybe repeating your first idea again can fill in some of that awkward space in between where you have your main ideas. But, you can always use your scale patterns to link these together. So we've got the ideas from our improv. We've linked them together. And there's one more part in choosing these ideas, we need to add some wow. And this is honestly the icing on the cake. We need to add some attitude. Put in what makes you stand out as a player. Your attitude, the way you like to play. You might have a certain vibrato that you like, or maybe the way you like rake across the strings. These little things that make you the unique guitar player that you are, the things that you like. This is important, and this is where we're going to put these in. Why? Because when you're putting your own slant on things, you come off a certain way. And what do you think that is? It's confident. And confidence, that's infectious and it's compelling. And if you add your style to a well thought out solo, which is everything we've done up to this point, we have a well thought out solo, we add your style to it. In my opinion, there is nothing better than this, a confident, well thought out solo. That's where things really sound great. So if you take all of these things I've talked about into consideration, and some of them may be obvious, but I know some of these steps aren't so obvious. You may not have thought of these. But if you take them all into consideration, you'll have a solo it's based on solid ground, and it'll be decisive and effective. It'll sound great, and it'll sound confident. You'll have something you can be proud of and something that brings joy to whoever listens to it. What more could you want from that? Okay, so now it's example time. I talked a little bit about my theme earlier on, the Play Guitar podcast theme. And so far on the show, the only guitar that you've heard on this show in 33 episodes, that's me playing. I love recording, and I wish I had more time to do it. Hopefully, that'll happen in the future. But let's get back to this intro. Let's take a listen to the intro again. And I'll talk a little bit about it as it's playing so I can point out the different sections and what the ideas were that I wanted. Here's the intro section. And that leads to a big bend right here with a fill. And here's the main rhythm sound with that kind of chromatic bass. Into the second section. This has got wider power chords, a little bit different tone. And this builds up to an end with a big. So the opening bed, that was the part with all that feedback guitars that kind of build and build. That's something I wanted. That was something I could talk over. I could say what's coming up on the show, but it builds intensity. And I used feedback from guitars, and no, I didn't have all my amps cranked to 11. Getting that feedback from a guitar in a home studio with neighbors that are at the time, the house we had, our neighbors were very close. So I couldn't crank the amps up. So to get that sound was very challenging for me. And I used a trick for that. I actually got the idea from a video on YouTube, and I tried it out and it worked awesome. It's very cool. And I think I'm going to go over that, like I said, in a video pretty soon. And that built into a big bend, big guitar, bending notes with the drum fill that went into the main rhythm, and it had that chromatic bass kind of that Hendrixy kind of sound, and which went into a second section, which was more hard rock with wider double power chords and a slightly different tone, and then to the end of the tune. So that's the different sections. But we're not really talking about that. We're talking about solos today. So let's take another listen one more time, and this time focus on the lead part, the solo. Okay, the lead's coming up now. Notice how much space there is in between melody sections. First phrase, space. Space. It's very simple. It uses the pentatonic scale. A little bit of a lick and then some feedback right here. Second section, a different tone with the lead right there. It's still choppy, it's still giving some space, but it's building right here. That's where I save the good stuff for the end. A real fast run to build up right up to the end. And if you listen to the rhythms in that fast run, it builds in speed as well. So I put lots of wow into that. I've got some tremolo bar in there. I've got some feedback in it. There's a fast run at the end, and there's a lot of bends. I've got vibrato, but the melody is pretty basic. It's just a few pentatonic notes, but it leaves space for the rhythm parts. You can really hear what's going on. So I think this was a good example to play something that you're familiar with and to show you how these steps can help you come up with a lead that's completely appropriate for the song, but also really cool at the same time. So now it's your turn to take action. Let's do some recording. Let's just record something simple and put these steps to the test. Come up with a chord progression that sounds fun to you, something you like to play over, but make it a certain time limit. Let's give ourselves some limits, maybe 20 or 30 seconds, and record it. Now, run through these steps for your lead. What would you do if this was going to be your big solo? Now, this is just for practice and to have fun with and see what you come up with. But you never know. You might come up with something really cool. It could be something you play for the rest of your life. You never know. And if you're having any problems with recording or are interested in that, let me know at feedback@playguitarpodcast.com. I would be happy to help you get into recording your guitar a little bit. So that was fun. Today we talked about how to build a guitar solo and all the steps you can take to streamline the process and come up with something great. Those steps were understanding what you're dealing with, next, deciding what you want to say, next, outlining your solo, next, choosing your ideas, and last, put it all together. We also saw how I put these to the test in creating my own intro for this podcast. So I hope you got something out of this. I know I did just by going through it. Going through from time to time, these things from time to time helps me focus on what's important, and it helps me leave off all that extra that could get in the way of a great song. My question for you is, what struggles do you have in soloing? Do you have great ideas but just can't get it right? Or is it something else? I don't know. Let me know. I'm sure we would all benefit from your experience building guitar solos. And you can tell us in the show notes over at playguitarpodcast.com/033. This is listener feedback. This is where if you've got a comment or question I can help you with, I'm going to try to do my best to help you. To get in touch, you can always email me at feedback@playguitarpodcast.com or tweet at me at playguitarpdcst or use the comments on the show notes page or the contact form. I'm easy to get in touch with, very easy. Well, this week, this was a regular week. I'm back. I'm done traveling and doing all this stuff. I'm back to work. I've had a great time. I'm working on the lesson site, working on that a little bit, and really enjoy hearing from a lot of you. And so let's talk about that. We've had some iTunes review. We had one iTunes review this week, or Apple Podcasts. I got to get used to saying that, from Camillo S. And he gave a wonderful review and a 5-star rating. And I want to say Thank you. I sure appreciate that, Camille. Thank you so much. I had some people on email this week. I had Jason H., and he had played when he was younger and he was getting back into it. And he's doing a lot of technique exercises. And he says they're starting to get a little bit drab. They're kind of non-musical, and he was wondering what to do about that. He's been jamming over songs, and I said, I think it's time for you to really get into opening up the fretboard a little bit more. So I tried to help him with that. Thanks, Jason, for the email. I got another email back from Michael from the folks at Shure. That was wonderful. Thanks, Michael. I got an email from Alec S., and he's starting back up playing guitar, and he wanted to know about a good practice routine. And we all know, I've said it a million times, I like a steady daily practice routine and not a very long one, half hour to an hour, but just make sure you keep at it day to day. So we work on that long-term memory that's so important. Also, got an email from Chris. Oh, thank you, Alec. I got an email from Chris M. He's been playing for a few years, and he wanted some help on understanding what chords sound good together. And I recommended taking a listen to episode 12. I recommend that for everyone. If you're having a hard time understanding why chords relate to each other and why certain chords sound good together when other ones don't, episode 12 it's mainly based on diatonic chords that come from the scale, and that's the first step to really understanding how chords fit together. So take a listen to that. Anyone who's listening to that, who needs to know about that, that's episode 12. And thanks, Chris, for that. On Twitter, I got a tweet from Jake J. And Jake, you're the inspiration for the show. He wanted to know all about composing great guitar solos. And so thanks, Jake. I really took it to heart. I went all out on it. So this was your big answer to your question, this whole episode. And last but not least, the Facebook group. We've got new members. We've got Jonathan B, Ronnie N, John P, Ian A, my buddy Ian, Alan H, Richard S, Josh H, Aniti R, and Chris M. Thank you all so much for joining this week. We've had some fun stuff on there. We've had some gear picks, some shared videos, had some really good question about goal setting. Some people have been sharing some backing track. We got to see Neil's guitar collection. And let me tell you something, Neil is giving Slash a run for his money. He's got an awesome guitar collection, and some all around funny guitar stuff. And also I did my Monday live stream on the Facebook group. I answered 3 different questions this week, and I had a lot of fun doing that. And I'd like to thank everybody in the group for participating, and it's just been going great. Okay, I think that's a wrap. So thank you for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts or your podcast player. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave an Apple Podcast review for the show. If you're interested in online lessons, go on over to playguitaracademy.com and join my early adopter list to get news on the opening of the site and an early adopter discount. Also, follow me on all of my different social media pages. Links to them are at playguitarpodcast.com. Thanks again, and I will see you on episode 34.